only about 31% of Americans trust our healthcare system. We have a terrible healthcare system. And, doctors suffer because of big corporations as well. Like my husband, operates on someone even though they don't have insurance and then has to sue health insurance companies to get paid.
A few moments later.
In what appears to be an ironic twist of fate, the husband of Sunny Hostin from The View, he has been accused of federal insurance fraud in the largest RICO case ever filed in the state of New York. He is accused of getting kickbacks by performing surgery and fraudulently billing a company that insures taxi companies, Uber, and Lyft drivers.
So it's been a while since I've called out The View. One of the more particularly insufferable hosts of The View would be Sunny Hostin, who I just realized that's a little bit of a pun as I've been recording this, but that's a point for a different time. But either way, in no surprising fashion, she's been coping and seething ever since Donald Trump won the 2024 election. Exhibit A.
I just didn't like the optics of a convicted felon sitting in the White House near a fireplace.
Congratulations. Thank you. And looking forward to having like we said, smooth transition.
And I think when Biden said that he was a convicted felon and had the morals of an alley cat, I agree with that.
Exhibit B.
It's something that I'm still struggling with, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on is how did a convicted felon resonate more with Americans than a hyper-qualified woman of color?
Now let me just reiterate this for the 100th time in case I haven't been clear enough. The Donald Trump trial was a complete and utter sham. They, under false pretenses, upped the whole banging Stormy Daniels and falsifying his hush money payments to her from what should have been a misdemeanor to a felony. And what's more, the jury didn't even need to be unanimous about what the exact crime was that Donald Trump committed. And maybe it seems that Americans caught on to the political persecution that he was facing, and instead of holding Donald Trump back, it only bolstered him. I mean, whether or not you voted for him, that's just my opinion, that people didn't like that the justice system was being weaponized against him. But let's watch Exhibit C of Sunny Hostin talking about Trump being a convicted felon.
I think sometimes, unfortunately, in this country, there are two sets of justice, right? I, too, have many family members convicted of felonies, marijuana.
And in case you haven't been following the news, she may in the future have more family members convicted since this clip, so keep that in mind.
Been able to get positions in certain places. They haven't even been able to get housing in certain places. When I applied to be a federal prosecutor, there was a checkbox. If you're a felon, explain the circumstances, and you were more than likely not to get that. Now, as Whoopi said, that we have a convicted felon in the White House. Those questions should not be asked of anyone, anytime, anywhere. That is
Okay, so places of employment have their own discretion. If they don't want to hire you based on a criminal record, they don't have to. But in the Constitution, there are only 3 major requirements laid out for running for president: being age 35, a natural-born citizen of the United States, and having lived here for at least 14 years. I really don't know what's so hard to understand about that. Now, I bring all these clips up to illustrate the idea that Sunny Hostin really likes to run her mouth, thinking that she knows more than she actually does. And it seems that in that hubris, she may have gotten somebody she cares about the most in trouble when they were talking about the Luigi Mangione case.
% of Americans trust. We know that, Americans trust our healthcare system. We have a terrible healthcare system. And, doctors suffer because of big corporations as well. Operates on someone even though they don't have insurance and then has to sue health insurance companies to get paid. But the notion that we are in a violent country, and it's just undeniable that that's the case. And so I'm not, unfortunately, surprised that people are celebrating the use of violence. I'm not surprised that this young man thought that change could be accomplished through violence. 1 in 4 Americans say violence against government sometimes is justified. And today, in 2024, 1 in 10 Americans say violence is justified right now against corporations and government.
That's very
those are just.
And even though I don't think he might change something, he might have laid out a plan for a copycat. That's what I say.
The sidebar for me was also laying out the groundwork for a copycat is you empathizing with someone who went out of their way to take the life of someone. And that someone, Brian Thompson, had a family. He was a husband and a father. The health insurance industry has its issues, yes, But by not condemning what happened, they're in their own way contributing to the problem, maybe inadvertently making the country a more violent country, as they say. But that's a point for a different time, because as of this week, it's come out that Sunny Hostin's husband, Emmanuel, an orthopedic surgeon, has been accused of insurance fraud in a RICO case among 200 other defendants, as he's alleged to have received kickbacks by performing surgery and fraudulently billing the insurance company American Transit Insurance Co., which also insures taxi companies and Uber and Lyft drivers. They allege that Hostin provided examinations to covered persons through Hostin Orthopedics, regardless of medical necessity, in exchange for kickbacks and or other financial compensation. And the kickbacks were disguised as dividends or other cash distributions for an investment Hostin has in Empire ASC, Ambulatory Surgical Center. The insurance company cited New York's no-fault law, saying that plaintiffs are required to pay for health service expenses that are reasonably incurred as a result of injuries suffered by occupants of the insured's motor vehicles, pedestrians, and bicyclists, and that the goal of the alleged fraud was to maximize reimbursement for no-fault benefits for medically unnecessary services, all of which, by Sunny's own admission, could land her husband in prison for a long time.
Prosecutors are like, oh, really? Well, how about we add some additional fraud charges onto you? And they're talking about threatening him with insurance fraud, which I would say you could get about 20 years in prison. So that's a death sentence for him.
So to sum all that up, in case it was hard for you to follow, because as somebody who's not in the insurance industry, it was hard for me to understand all of that in the beginning. But basically what was happening was that Sunny Hostin's husband and 200 other doctors were taking bribes to provide medically unnecessary services, and then they would unfairly bill their insurance company. And on top of that, they would claim the money that they're getting from those bribes as investment income. Think of it like stock income as the equivalent, all of which amounts to fraud. And this nearly 700-page lawsuit lists dozens of surgical centers, orthopedic services, and doctors, and is reported to be one of the largest RICO cases ever filed in New York. And according to Emmanuel's lawyer, he denies each and every allegation, calling a meritless lawsuit by a near-bankrupt insurance carrier. Now, I do have to remind you that all of this still is alleged. Everyone is entitled to their fair day in court. It's just funny to me, it's one of those things where the joke writes itself, because she's been smug and condescending about how Donald Trump is a felon, this and that. Yeah, if her husband is convicted on this, then she'll have to live with the fact that she was married to the one thing that she detests the most. And for somebody who makes a living off of being holier than thou, that to me is a start of a fair punishment. Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're new to this channel, hopefully I've earned a subscription. Here's some videos for you to watch in the meantime. Until next time, peace out.